War is urgent and it's spectacular, but it's also personal, it's intimate. And one of the things I've learned over the past few years is it's the human moments that really count. So please let me show you. Let me take you to Aleppo in September of last year. Here you see Mohammed Janidi. He's sitting on the pavement, he's standing at first, then he sits down, and he's calling out his son's name, Hussam. That's a body bag at his feet, and his son is inside. You know, Aleppo was chaos, but that's an ordinary day. People are walking around, they're walking past, some stop and they look at him. Mohammed Janidi stops and very tenderly, he opens a corner of the body bag and he speaks to his dead son inside. And he says, "Come on, son, get up. Don't let the world see us like this." Eventually an ambulance comes and it picks up the body bag. It's a very powerful moment, but we never actually see the corpse. And Mohammed says, to no one in particular, his mum's going to be really angry when she hears about this. The BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, says this: "You don't just go to wars for the sake of it. You've got to have a reason, because I think it's very intrusive, prurient almost, to turn up on the worst day of somebody's life just because I want to be a war correspondent." So why do we do it? Well, we do it to bring you insight, to take you to far-off battles, to far-off places, to give you a picture of lives interrupted, lives that seem so very different from ours. Look at Mohammed Janidi. I think in that moment, that was maybe 20 seconds on the 10 o'clock news. You learn more about loss and suffering in Aleppo than you would have from watching 100 battles and reading 1,000 words in an article. You know, it's really wise to pay attention. We aren't immune from his suffering. And we aren't immune from the causes of his war. He isn't an alien species. He's one of us. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a son. When you're in the middle of a battle, when you're covering war, lots of things go through your head. It's terrifying, but we foreign correspondents have a dirty secret. It's also thrilling. The things that go through your head, sometimes it's existential. What the hell am I doing here? Other times it's more mundane. Was my helmet straight in that last piece to camera? But we're there, we go there, following the people leading, and sometimes we're on different sides in a conflict. My colleagues will be covering one side, I'll be covering another. We aren't campaigners, but we all share a fundamental belief, and that's in the power of witnessing, even if you don't like what we see. Let me introduce you to someone else. This is Zara Ajam. I met him 6 years ago in Afghanistan. That meeting has stayed with me ever since. Here's why. I'll show you another picture. That's taken from a bank's CCTV footage. Look at the smile on his face. He's armed to the teeth. He's just murdered 42 men, women, and children in that bank in eastern Afghanistan at close range. Before he joined the Taliban, he knew nothing. He didn't even know his own age. He thought he was 16 or 18. He broke rocks by hand in a quarry. And when I interviewed him, I was close enough to touch him, to look into his eyes and to tell him for the very first time that he was going to hang for his crime. He was genuinely surprised, and he showed no remorse. So why let me bring this appalling young man, this murderer, into your sitting room? Because it was an important moment. It was a moment of realization for me, and hopefully for the audience too. I realized then that Afghanistan would probably be a war without end, that there was an unlimited supply of Zara Ajams, of easily manipulated, angry, uneducated young men who were being fed into this war machine. And that Scottish soldiers, English, French, American, Afghans were all dying in Afghanistan for a war that might never truly be winnable. These aren't just superficial moments when we bring you these people. They aren't just gratuitous moments. They're moments of understanding about tactics, about strategy. They are moments that tell you about war, whether it will be won or lost. They're moments that decide the fate of nations. So keep watching. War has changed a lot. Remember this in 2003, maybe some of you don't, but this was a moment that was portrayed as victory. Victory in Iraq. We have to avoid triumphalism as reporters. This wasn't a moment of victory. This wasn't mission accomplished. All these years later, Iraq, like Afghanistan, still suffers. And you still need to hear about it. And as war has changed, it's become a lot more dangerous. My friends and colleagues are being kidnapped and killed at a rate we haven't seen before, some in the most brutal and grisly fashion. 800 reporters have been killed, more than that in the past decade. Let me take you to somewhere very special. This is the Reporters' Memorial in Bayeux, France. Each of those stone pillars that you see represents a year. And as you walk through that wooded glade in the Normandy countryside, you notice that the list of names of reporters that have died doing their job that year, it lengthens as the years go on. It's a place to stop and to touch the stone and feel the names of colleagues and friends. I remember Anya Nerdinghaus. She was an AP photojournalist. She liked to drink, smoked like a chimney, had a filthy laugh, had such humor and such humanity you could hardly imagine. She was killed by a member of the Afghan security forces in Afghanistan. And there's another name that they're going to be adding to one of the pillars this year, Shifa Gardner. She was a fantastically glamorous Kurdish journalist. In Iraq, I met her the day before she died on the front lines in Mosul. She was so glamorous that even in the midst of battle, the soldiers were stopping to take selfies and to get her autograph. Then the next day, she went somewhere important. She went to what we thought was a mass grave belonging to the so-called Islamic State. We think they buried thousands of bodies there, and they left something else there. They left a booby trap, and it killed Shifa, and it badly injured her cameraman. And months later in Erbil in Iraq, I sat in a dark auditorium like this with her colleagues at her memorial, and I listened to grown men and women sob. 800 over the past 10 years. Don't talk to me about fake news. Look at this lot. I call them the Deadbeat Club. These are my friends and colleagues. There are journalists there from ITV, from Sky News, and of course from the BBC. We were all in Mosul, covering that battle. I have to say that pretty much every one of us will tell you it's the most dangerous thing that any of us ever did. But you know what? We went back again and again and again. And the reason that we went back is, well, let me just tell you, first of all, here's an interesting point. Aside from Iraq itself, no other country sent so many journalists to cover that conflict than Britain. And we did that not because British soldiers are dying there. They aren't. There are hardly any British soldiers there, a few special forces, some trainers. We went because this is the story of our time, the battle against the so-called Islamic State, and you need to know about it. So, really, this is the good news. There is good news. In Britain, we've created a media which is broadly accurate most of the time, which is truthful. More importantly, it challenges you. Pay attention to it. When you watch the news, you should feel angry. You should feel moved. You should feel sickened. And really, those moments when you don't want to watch anymore, keep watching. Thank you.